Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our special webinar conference, the Pandemic's Digital Shift, Keeping Your Organization Resilient and Secure. My name is B. Luwalaka, and I will be your host for the event. I'd just like to remind you all to please make sure that your speakers are all working and that your web browser is updated to the latest version. So in this event, we'll be talking about the COVID-19 pandemic's effect on organizations across the globe, and particularly how it has led everyone working remotely from their homes. It has opened up more cybersecurity challenges, which, as we all know, constitutes the perfect breeding ground for cyber attacks. And we, as Escom, have partnered with CyberArk to lead this webinar and to raise awareness on this pressing issue. So CyberArk, it's the only security software company focused on eliminating cyber threats using insider privileges to attack the heart of the enterprise. I would like you all to actually notice and engage with the chat box on the right side of the screen. Please do answer the poll questions along with downloading the brochures that will be published throughout the event. Along with that, you may also type and ask your questions there for the Q&A session later. So to start our session, actually, I would like to call on Engineer Jose Carlos Reyes. Engineer Reyes is an electronics engineer with 30 years of professional experience, of which 15 years have been devoted to government services. He's currently the director of the Cybersecurity Bureau under the Department of Information and Communications Technology of the Philippines. And he will be discussing the topic on navigating cybersecurity amidst COVID-19. On to you, Engineer.
Distinguished guests, fellow public servants, ICT security practitioners, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant, secured, and safe afternoon to everyone. First and foremost, let me thank the organizers of this event, Escom and CyberArk, for the invitation and for putting together this webinar, which is very, very untimely in light of the current crisis we are facing right now. As we are aware of, all of us is adjusting to the new normal, where we as a society adapt to safe new ways to work, to travel, to interact, and most of all, to go about our daily lives. Whenever possible, organizations are utilizing the work from home environment to help slow down the spread of the coronavirus, and hopefully in the long run in flattening the curve. While this is generally a practical and sensible scenario, it increases the cybersecurity risk to the organization's entire operation, requiring staff to shift quickly to a new work routine, which I believe specifically require additional security protection from within or externally. It is but natural to assume that everyone will work together in the fight against this COVID-19. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Cyber criminals are taking advantage of the fear and uncertainty surrounding the coronavirus pandemic, as well as the increased time spent online. Even the unthinkable in such a time as this, cyber attacks on critical infrastructures continue to happen unabated, undermining the capability of the health sector, or most of the critical sectors. Whilst the vast majority of the people and countries have come together and rallied to this international mission to defeat this coronavirus, there will always be some who seek to exploit the crisis for their own criminal and hostile intentions. These cyber criminals or gangs and other malicious groups are and will continuously target individuals, businesses, and other organizations, sometimes deploying COVID-19 related scams such as phishing, malware, and ransomware. This also includes the group in the cybersecurity world known as advanced persistent threat groups, which are sophisticated networks of hackers who try to breach computer systems. There is a clear evidence that these criminal gangs are actively targeting national and international organizations, which are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, which makes them particularly more dangerous at this time. We, at the Cybersecurity Bureau of the Department of ICT are working with these potential vulnerable sectors of society to make sure that they are aware of the cyber threats and that they can take the necessary steps to protect themselves. At the very least, mitigate the harm that could be brought against them. With that in mind, the Bureau publishes regular warnings and advisories about these groups. In the midst of this crisis, we continue to enhance the security resilience of critical infrastructure, the government network, public and military networks, in dealing with the sophisticated cyber attacks through the issuance of policies and guidelines, and of course, the promotion of adoption of crucial cybersecurity measures. There are various objectives and motivations that lie behind these attacks, from fraud, on the other hand, to espionage. But they tend to be designed to steal personal data, intellectual property, and wider information that support those aims. We expect this kind of predatory criminal behavior to continue and evolve over the coming months or even years ahead of us. And we are taking a range of measures to tackle the threat. So, as we have been doing, we will share advices on nature of those threats to enable businesses, citizens, and other relevant stakeholders to better defend themselves against this full range of cyber attack, from hostile actors to criminal gangs. Preventive action is often the very best way to deny attackers the opportunities they are looking for. We will make it harder for these criminals in their pursuit of creating havoc through breaching of information. The DICT offers a range of practical advice to safeguard against cyber attacks, from things like as simple as the use of online passwords, guidance on trusted sources of online information, and to cyber attacks which may involve our national security. As well as providing practical advice, our office continues to counter those who conduct cyber attacks. And we're working very closely with our international partners, both to respond to these threats and to deter the groups who lie behind them. Fraudsters are likely to take advantage of these vulnerabilities created when employees work from home. Experts expect a rise of malicious activities, specifically targeting those who are working remotely. Phishing campaigns may impersonate themselves or direct recipients to fake login pages ostensibly to provide remote access to work networks or accounts. As the Cybersecurity Bureau incidents handled by the DICT continue to rise, other phishing scams purport to be new updates from Philippine government authorities or private organizations, directing recipients to click malicious links for updates on the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, new containment measures ordered by the government, or local advisories. Today's pandemic threatens not only the lives of our countrymen, but our very survival, as it put extreme pressure in our economy. With businesses struggling to survive, the last thing industries need is the additional and extremely damaging burden of cyber attacks. It is in this light that all of us, all of you in cybersecurity, both in government and private sectors, are considered frontliners as well in the fight against this unseen enemy. To that I say, stay in the fight. Let's all work together through this pandemic towards a cyber-resilient society. Good afternoon and stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much and mabuhay.
Informative talk. You can all take from his speech that yes, we must all work together to fight during this time of the pandemic, especially now that we're very prone to cyber attacks coming from multiple channels as well. Thank you once again, Engineer Reyes. And now for our next session, we will be having Danny Heng and YK Wong of CyberArk. YK Wong is a certified information system security professional with over 13 years of experience. He has been CyberArk's ASEAN Solutions Engineer since 2012, providing advice and consultancy of privileged access management solutions to help enterprises secure their organization from insider and external cyber threats. And Danny Heng, with more than 13 years of experience in the IT services industry, is CyberArk's District Sales Manager of Rest of ASEAN. He is recognized as a cybersecurity professional and responsible for serving enterprise clients and managing the Rest of Asia team. Please also download the files that are shared and answer the poll in the chat box as we listen to them discuss the 5 key reasons to prioritize privileged access management in the new normal. Over to you, Daniel. Wyckitt.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Danny. So I'm based in Singapore, where the APJ HQ office is. Yes, just a quick introduction of CyberArk. CyberArk actually has been in the market for the last 20 years. So we have about 3,000 staff worldwide, about 100 staff in APJ, based in APJ. So we have offices from in Singapore to Australia and in China and in Japan. So we are the undisputed leader in privileged account management with more than 6,000 customers globally, and we have the largest customer base globally as well. 50% of the Fortune 500 companies, which includes of the 23 top banks as well as the 21 top energy companies are all of our customers. And I'd like to highlight that CyberArk is a laser-focused company that we only focus end-to-end privileged account management solutions. So yes, so we are the number one when it comes to privileged access management. So I would like to hand this session over to my colleague Wyckitt. So he will be actually sharing with you more of the technology what CyberArk is able to provide. Hi, Wyckitt, over to you.
Just to run a check whether you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. All right. Thanks. All right. Thanks, Danny, for an introduction. And so moving, first of all, very good afternoon to everyone. So again, my name is Wyckitt. I'm a senior solutions engineer. Then moving forward, I will carry on to cover today's topics of the 5 key reasons to prioritize privileged access management solutions in these new normal situations. Okay, so many companies are continues to spend security budget, right? So however, a maturity of adopting privileged access security are still being questionable. So if we look at security breaches happens all over the years recently, most of it started by compromising the privileged credentials. And if an organization truly invested on full privileged users lifecycle management, which is combined of the identity management and privileged access management, the chances of data breach can really be reduced significantly. So today I'm going to cover the topic with the list of agenda here, which includes a quick introductions of an important roles of privileged access play in the organizations, as well as the 5 key reasons why to put privileged access security as a priority. So last but not least, to simplify the secure access for remote users to the critical system in the organization. So please make yourself comfortable and let's begin. All right, first of all, the key takeaway by end of these sessions is to get you to know why securing privileged access is important nowadays, and more specifically, why it should be prioritized as part of the security budget in your organizations. In fact, right, there are so many security solutions out there, and it becomes a very difficult choice to most of the managements to prioritize any of this. So every organization, of course, every organization has a limited budget. They have their own visions and roadmaps to follow. Most importantly, they see things differently based on many considerations and factors as well. Put this way, when you are with the large enterprises, your infrastructures and applications are likely quite complex, and it can be very difficult for you to identify which are your critical assets. Okay. And you will also need to probably deal with many people in different departments to justify your proposals. These are part of the reasons make it difficult to actually identify which security project to tackle with, or even like which orders to go. So when thinking about how to prioritize these security projects, right, it's best to take a step back, actually to think about your business goal, your requirements, and think about how security can bring the returns on investments for your company as well. So as well as, and when you are in the security leader positions, right, you are mostly helping to drive the conversations with business values of the strong cybersecurity, for example, like to tackle with the risk mitigations, how to maintain a strong security practice, meet the compliance audit, and also not to forget, of course, to set the balance by improving operational efficiency and perhaps to increase the agility of applications developments if you are the in-house applications in-house. So let's now talk about the top 5 reasons why privileged access management should be prioritized. All right, first of all, right, privilege is often the gateway route to your critical asset. If you look at all the major security breaches in the past, right, these major attacks share at least one thing in common. So that our privileged credentials are compromised and get stolen and being used to carry out the attack. And commonly we found endpoints or workstations, right, are always being targeted and how the attacks begins. Somehow when attacker managed to get a foothold into your organization's network, probably by establishing the persistent access, then the attacker can then escalate their privileges, gaining access to the server uses the same credential or password. And this, of course, is in the event that poor security policy in place and the security practice, best practice are not followed properly. And when you look at the average enterprises in all industry and sectors, the amount of privileged credential is keep expanding and they are growing. So there are more and more users, IT admin users, as well as the system and devices than ever before. This becomes difficult to manage when you don't have a strong visibility on tracking who has access to it and what kind of resources at the back end. So we pretty much know privileged credentials are everywhere. It's probably in your every piece of hardware and software across your entire IT stack in your organizations, which is like including the operating system, in the data, in the application itself, endpoints, even the network devices, regardless where it's located on the traditional on-prem data center or fully on cloud. We do all know privileged users have the capability to change the system, right? And they do impact the operations service for the business processes for daily operations. So in any organizations, this include not just only the system administrator, but it also extend to other non-IT users as well who hold the local administrator access to their own workstation. So as well as this also extend to non-human or machine users such as like the applications that using the service accounts connecting to the other system or even backend applications or the software robots of the the robotic process automations workflow. So on one hand, privileged access will allow the IT admins to perform their daily operation tasks to support the organization's day-to-day business. But on the other hand, it is something always been targeted by attackers, include both internal and external malicious actor. So if these privileged credentials will fall into the wrong hands, right, this might likely what's going to be happens to the organizations. And when we look at current state of major cybersecurity breaches happens over the years, right, we often see privileged accounts are playing part of the important roles to carry out successful attack. So, and if we put ourselves in hacker shoes, think like what they think, right? Getting on these privileged accounts will simply allow them to impersonate as legitimate users and allow them to gain full access to the system. So think of this way, whenever possible, attackers will always pursue on getting on these privileged accounts. A part of it is the second reasons to get us thinking on prioritize the PAM solutions is people tends to make mistake. They not only just make a mistake, but by human nature, are always looking for easy way out. There's always a challenge in between balance of the product usability and the security. So if people are given the opportunity or to take shortcut in connecting to the target system or the backend resources like database, we know they always will, right? So same goes with attackers. They are also the humans. So they are looking for the lower hanging fruits that allows them to gain access to the networks quietly, and most importantly, to stay under the radar without being detected. Right. Then previous users are they always in the organizations at all level. For example, like employee, the contractors, and even the customer themselves. They are required to access this critical system and the backend resources. And if happens, these privileged access are not being handled properly, right? These unmanaged privilege always make organizations vulnerable and could just like ended up put your company at risk. And if let's say these privileged credentials are being shared among the team. As well as the challenge is that even the actions are not meant for malicious intentions, this can still cause a very serious damage to the organizations. For instance, like if one of the employees somehow causes the data breach, company will lose not only just the sensitive data, but also the financial loss and also the reputation's damage as well. With that being said, right, human error are potentially even more dangerous when the error is made by the privileged users. And these privileged users can either human itself or the non-human like applications. The difference is machine and applications do what they are programmed to. They run the routine, but the people don't always play by rules. So regardless of human, they make mistake unintentionally or by malicious intentions. When the attacker somehow managed to penetrate from external, went through your firewall, your IPS, your IDS, or likely they are already operated within the network, privileged credentials are always the first thing they are going after. First, of course, they will land a foothold into the network by all means, by any kind of the methodology. So get the initial privileged credentials and to roam around and continues to escalate the privileges, move laterally or even like vertically in the environment. As long as they stay under the radar without being discovered, the chance they are getting closer to the target are high. By the time the team is aware about it and about to make a response to it, it's always been too late. The attacker, having to say that, the attacker is always one step ahead. The third reasons to consider a privilege doesn't just stop with human. So what does it mean? So this means privileged access is not just meant to use by human for interactive access like the RTP or even SSH remote access, but also by the non-human, for example, like applications, program, automated processes for non-interactive access as a service or applications accounts. And don't be surprised that, right, the number of applications accounts are likely more than the number of human users in the organizations. And this, and they often require privileged access to run the routine tasks. So as such, right, these applications credentials hold the same risk or even more greater than the human credentials because they are not easy to be identified and managed as well. Think about some of the off-the-shelf solutions like vulnerability scanner, robotic process automation software, where they also need to perform repeatable tasks in automated way. So all these solutions require credentials, and very often they have access to the sensitive resources at the back end. So again, privileged identity are not just exclusive to human users, but they're also nowadays also expanding to the non-humans or the machine's identity as well. In general, some of the critical challenges having these applications credentials are they are everywhere in the organizations across the entire IT stack, and just like all other human-based privileged credentials that you can find in the organization. And most of the time, these credentials are being hard-coded, they are being embedded in the clear text and can be found in the application, script, in the code, and most importantly, they store it locally in the workstation, in the server, as well as in the database table as well. That make these hard-coded applications credentials likely out of control. And this kind of credentials, right, usually difficult to track who and what has access to it and what are they doing with that access. So in words, there is no way to track of accountability, and eventually will lost the entire visibility as well. Last but not least, and most importantly, is right, attackers are often pursuit of this kind of credentials, probably due to the easy target. They are in the clear text, and it's usually a very powerful ID. So look at this, the group of applications credentials are actually aligned to the change of technology. Nowadays, where we're seeing applications, their application credentials or the hard-coded credentials, right, are continuous to growing and expanding in the organization, especially when the organization infrastructures and the applications are changed significantly. So you think about that back then in the 20 years ago, right, when applications were running on physical server and they are hardly changed when it's rolled out to productions. And then the hypervisors technology was introduced, the VM technology. Organizations start moving their applications into virtualized environment that will give the IT operations and applications teams to build their infrastructures and application in more flexible and easiest way. But of course, not so much on agility yet. So while the technology continue to evolve, nowadays most of the modern applications are running on containers and built with microservices to make applications development more agile, more automated, and elastic in a way to serve the changes of applications in more effective way. So with that changes, right, a lot more of applications containers can now be spinning up automatically up and down without human interventions. That also means more and more applications credentials are being used in the environments and potentially expand the attack vectors by creating more opportunity of access to the attackers. And in short, regardless of human or non-human credentials, all should eventually be secure and managed without any exceptions. All right, the fourth reasons, privilege on the workstations are always the weakest links. So as mentioned in my first few slides, privilege exists everywhere, including all the IT and business users' workstations. Having privilege or administrative access on every workstation, right, will potentially create a massive security risk. Getting the privilege on the endpoints will just allow the attackers take over the entire endpoints and allow them to move laterally from there. And of course, there's a strong need to apply the tight control on the endpoint itself, as workstations are continued to be the primary target, and is a critical point for the privilege escalation as well. So as part of the mitigations like removing local admin right and apply the least privileges principles to those who only requires the necessary access to perform only the certain tasks. So other than that, right, application control is also crucial by blocking those like the non-malicious applications, ensures that only trusted applications are allowed regardless of the privileged or the non-privileged users. Do bear in mind that there are a ton of applications out there, and those are not always can be identified on the spot. So not only just on the whitelist, everything on whitelist or in the blacklist. So those unknown applications need to be handled with extra care. For example, like restrict them from accessing the corporate network share, accessing to internet, as well as the removable drive before these applications are being identified as clean. Okay, let me continue from the previous points. Many attacks today, right, still originate on the endpoint itself, and this attack don't have to be that really advanced. Traditional methods such as like downloaded the ready hacking tools from the internet, phishing, and even the social engineering methods still proven to be very effective to compromise an endpoint. So once the attackers get in, attackers get in, right, the attackers may just leverage with the, for example, like keystroke logging malware. They steal the workstation's admin password. And if this password is being used on the other machine, the same credentials are used, the attacker can now easily log into another workstations. On top of that, the attackers can even extract the password hashes, which are stored in the computer memory for all the users who recently logged into the machine, that's including the administrator as well. So using these stolen hashes, the attacker can now move laterally to the other workstations. And guess what? Eventually, they will land to the domain controller and execute the golden ticket attack, and again access to all the critical access within the environments. All right, risk can also be inherited from external access by remote employees and third-party vendor as well. And the truth is, on one hand, there are many evidence in many security breaches in the past were caused by external remote access. However, on the other hand, customer is using CyberArk solutions to manage and access their critical system. With that in mind, securing from external access to the critical system within their organization is very important and critical. And from security perspective, organizations should keep as many doors secure as possible, not to just shut one door, but let the other door opens. So when we talk about third-party vendors, they are not part of the company employee, or they are not being fully trusted by the company. However, these workforce are crucial, and they are always needed by many organizations nowadays on helping them to perform the day-to-day operation tasks. That also means they are required to access the critical system in the organization, and most likely with privileged access. So this kind of third-party vendors may come in from different aspects or industry that require privileged access to the critical system remotely. For example, like the hardware and software vendors. Okay, they'll provide the remote service for hardware and software maintenance. They may require privileged access to install or remove the software. An IT service provider who also like providing the help desk support, they may require local administrator right to access the user workstations, right? And the supply chain vendors, they're supporting the productions and delivery of goods through the SAP system, for example, as well as the external consultant who require business and IT expertise to have access to the wide range of systems in the organizations in order to complete the project in timeline basis. So the point here is, regardless of the privileged account that are used by the remote vendors, users, right? They are created by the third party themselves or by the internal IT team. This has always raised a challenge for IT organizations to manage and to control the privileged credentials, especially on the security, visibility, tracking, and the entire users management lifecycle perspective. Well, in the current new normal situations, remote access workforce are not only just limited to third-party vendors, but now it's greatly extended to the employee who requires to work remotely outside of an organization's network as well. So the question here is, how can an organization adapt to it by giving better control over it, as well as to simplify the entire user's provisioning and deprovisioning process? All right, so now, regardless of the remote access by third-party vendors or by the internal employee itself, let's now we group them as a common term called remote user access. On one hand, in common way, most of the organization extend remote user access via VPN secure tunnel, right? But on the other hand, this also creates some level of trust to the remote users that may give the users an abusive right to access to other systems if these privileged credentials are not being handled properly. So, and you know what, attackers know this very well as well. So, and they are looking into compromise the remote users' workstations and potentially gain access to your network from the remote users' workstation side. All right. Essentially, many organizations today still have to rely on third party in order to give them access, the privileged access, so they can do their daily operations work, especially in current pandemic situations. Both internal employee and external vendors are required to work remotely, include accessing to the critical system from their remote site. And not surprisingly, many organizations they do know third-party risk is important, and they do put it as a top security risk to be considered or even put under review. But however, right, even though organizations are very well aware that the need of remote access, remote vendor access, and how critical it is, but many organizations are still not satisfied with their current ability to actually secure the third-party vendor access. So part of the reasons that I observe, right, many organizations nowadays that's still relying on VPN access as their primary methods to allow third-party vendor access. Here is not. I'm not saying that VPN should not be used at all. They are playing very well in securing the point-to-point connections from remotely. However, VPN alone, right, doesn't provide privileged access best practice, like the granular access control, password rotation, and the sessions recording and monitoring as well. So protecting the entire remote user access has a bigger picture that needs to be covered, not only just a small. All right, so here, let's set the stage then and make some conclusion on what we had just went through. First, remote employee definitely, and the third-party vendors do need the privileged access to the critical system within the organizations. And the organizations are relying on remote users' access to perform their daily operation tasks. And this operation typically require privileged access. Second, the remote access is unsecure and can become extremely difficult to track and manage. And this means that the management of this user's identity could become unmanageable or out of control, especially when they are the third-party users who are not part of the organizations, and therefore their identities and the user's profile need to be managed and controlled separately. Third, the remote vendors and employee workflow is always dynamic. They are fast changing, and they often like come and go. And most of the time could have more than one person assigned to access to the system. With that, right, not only just difficult to track, but difficult to keep pace with the fast changing of the human resources. And last but not least, due to the dynamic workflow of remote users provisioning and the provisioning process will also create a significant overhead to the IT team. Okay, so right now today's solutions used to access the network remotely are typically using VPN access, and very often we see access through secure client with security agent has to be installed, and providing corporate laptop with most security lockdown to external vendors, of course, may incur the additional costs and additional maintenance as well. And without further control, passwords are being shared among the remote vendors that will eventually lose accountability, right? Then, of course, and provisioning and deprovisioning users through VPN access typically will require a tedious process and complex change requests that may involve multiple teams, for example, like the operations team and security teams, and will take significant turnaround time. Okay. And last, there is always a challenge to secure remote employee without applying additional security layer. So the ideal solutions to effectively secure the remote user access based on zero trust access model shall first to simplify and secure the remote access by leveraging with software as a service model that can easily deploy without concerning about the scalability. When your users grow, when your server or systems grow within your organization, it can be easily scaled. And of course, to utilize the capabilities to confirm the identity through the biometric authentication, as well as to simplify the entire user's provisioning process for external vendors with the more granular and rigid control. The last of the top 5 reasons, audit and compliance requirements always continues to be the top requirement for any of the security solutions that the company is looking into, especially in those highly regulated industry like financials, banking, and healthcare. So these regulatory bodies require a very deep audit trail and accountability of the privileged users' activity. So this is something that is demanded by most of the enterprise level policy requirement, as well as being prominent in various regulations and standard to adapt the compliance standard change from time to time. And most importantly, accountability and audit are particularly important for all the privileged access. Some common compliance regulatory that often followed by most of the enterprise and PAM solutions may actually helps and support to meet compliance regulatory directly or even indirectly, like the PDPA, Philippine Data Privacy Act, GDPR, TRM, ISO, or even IPCI, and many, many more. Some control and requirements in commons stated in this kind of compliance standards, right, are the track of the privileged access to the critical data, and of course to provide the visibility over the administrative users' actions, and to increase the operational efficiency and overall security by centrally lock down or manage all the privileged credentials. And definitely to record and log all the activity accessed by the internal and external party for auditing purposes. So in the event if anything happens, so they can actually to play back the entire records or the audits logged. And last but not least, to segregate the privileged access by tiers or zone. So beside the top 5 reasons why to prioritize PAM solutions, right? Also do look at the considers the view and our perspective of other analysts. So like Gartner has chosen privileged access management as a top security project for the years of 2018 and 2019. Okay, from what they share, right, Gartner outlined 2 very important points. First, the PAM project is intended to make the attacker life more difficult to access to the privileged account. And should any of the security teams, should allow the security teams to monitor the behavior for the unusual access. And the second point, PAM solutions are critical and important and must work together with the, for example, like identity governance solution and the multi-factor authentication solutions to complete the entire user's management life cycle. Another source of third-party analysts recently published in May 2020, CyberArk came out as a top leadership compass for privileged access management. And this, we are proud to inform that this is the 5th year in a row CyberArk is in the top position in this Copinga Core report. And part of the reason CyberArk has been identified and ranked as the top in 5 years in a row, right? Because of our innovations and adoptions of the new technology that are moving along with the market change. All right, security is always a team game. Threat may come from any angles, from in all shape and all size, and to fight against them, right, is the shared responsibility for all the security solutions to work together. And in fact, no single security solutions provider can cover all aspects. It's not just about the PAM solution itself, right? This is for any other security solution as well. Cover as much as possible, and should also look for getting the most of your investments from business and the technical perspective. All right, this showed a quick view of our technology partner ecosystem called the Secure Alliance. In our partner ecosystem, CyberArk has worked with over 130 plus certified technology partner that we are integrated with from different solution industry. For example, like vulnerability management, detection and discovery tools, DevOps tools, robotic process automations, and many, many more. This kind of off-the-shelf solutions has no exceptions. They also require previous credentials in order for them to perform the scanning or build the automated process where CyberArk comes in and act as a central credentials provider for them. And whenever these previous credentials are required by these solutions, right, to carry out their automation tasks, they may now get it from our central repository. And the full list of supported technology partners on how and what integrations are being built are all published in our website, our marketplace. Yeah. Well, before I put these presentations to the end, I just would like to take this opportunity and to let you know that we are having our Virtual Impact Live event this year. To be exact, it's going to be happens in next Wednesday and Thursday. This is our yearly biggest event, and due to this pandemic situation, right, we are still going to make it happen. Even though this is a virtual event, you may still take this opportunity, let us to share with you and for you to learn, engage and network with the CyberArk personnel. Okay, don't worry about it. We will also include this impact registrations link in the thank you email after this webinar. So you can go ahead and register and attend to our Impact Live event next week. So with that, this is my last slide. Thank you.
Very insightful session. As you now are well aware of the access management in your company, especially during this time as we have to adapt to the new normal. I'm sure right now is the time to apply all these solutions and make sure that your company, organization is all safe and secure. So next on tap is the much awaited panel discussion. I know you're all excited as I am, so let's keep it rolling with Ms. Anna Pabellon, who will be our moderator for this session. Anna is a certified information system auditor and a Deloitte Southeast Asia partner, taking care of risk advisory services such as regulatory, financial technology, and cyber risk services. Before moving to Deloitte, she actually headed the Technology Information Security Group of the Philippines' largest telco. Once again, I would also like to remind all of you attendees and delegates to please feel free to ask your questions in the chat box that's listed on the right side for the question and answers Q&A that's be right after this. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, B. So good afternoon, everybody. So as the COVID-19 pandemic radically disrupted our work environments, the first priority has been crisis response, emphasizing health and safety, essential services, and the virtualization of work and education. Resilient leaders pivoting from the respond to recover phases are now focusing on reopening and restoring the workplace effectively, efficiently, and safely. This challenge is putting pressure on organizations to implement new procedures and practices in a very short period of time. One of the common responses is to accelerate digital, the shift to digital. Today, we are going to tackle the implications and the possible ways of managing cybersecurity risk as organizations shift towards this new way of working. So with us today, we're fortunate to have Ms. Charmaine Valmonte and Danny Heng. Ms. Charmaine is the Vice President and Head of IT Security, Compliance, and Quality Assurance of Aboitiz Equity Ventures. She is a certified risk and cybersecurity professional with 30 years experience in IT and information security and resiliency. Well, Danny has more than 13 years experience in the IT services industry, and he brings a wealth of experience in the area of privileged access management to secure organizations from internal and external security risk. His strong appreciation of the cybersecurity space has enabled him to provide strategic counsel to companies across Southeast Asia as a trusted expert. Now, let's get the ball rolling. So for the first question, so this is for Charmaine. What are the process changes that your organization, AEV in particular, has put in place as a response to this pandemic and the reality that most of your workforce probably will continue to work remotely? And what are the top cybersecurity risks you are concerned about? Thus, what are the measures you have put in place or plan to implement as a result? Over to you, Charmaine.
All right, thank you for the time here. Again, thank you for the introduction. One of the things in Aboitiz Group, we are a multi-industry conglomerate. In that sense, we've been in different stages of our digital transformation. And by doing that, you're moving from on-premise to cloud, also to a borderless type of environment now. And if you look at our banking arm, it's really jumped and moved over to the digital space, right? Being that, so we've had to strengthen the cloud environment. That's number one. Number two, we've had projects, and in the last 2 years, we wanted to make sure we had endpoint protection, detection, and we had eyes on, or continuous monitoring across the environment. And that's quite a challenge when you're in a multi-industry environment. But at the same time, as we move over to the cloud, and suddenly as we're doing this transition, we find ourselves in, right? We have to work from home and we have to extend this environment. And we're forced to do that. It was not a problem in that sense, because we've extended and increased that. However, it speeds up your plan. Our plan to go to zero trust architecture was about 3 years out, right? That's not going to happen today. You have to do it today, right? And today you have to be fast. And so in that aspect, zero trust architecture, not necessarily buying just a tool. It's not about buying a solution and there you have it. As previously, as we talked about, privileged access management is so important because we're now moving from the perimeter base and we're moving to the no perimeter. Your internet is your network, and that's basically the mantra that you have to follow. So you're looking at multi-factor privileged access management. So you're changing that whole paradigm shift in the way we think that we think about security. So we're halfway there, and so it was an easy transition. It worked for us because it allowed us the ability for our organization, or for me to be able to tell the board of the story of why we need to go faster and we need to implement this to provide support to this changing environment.
All right, thank you. So it was easier for your organization since you started already with your cloud journey a few years back, but still you still had to accelerate certain items.
Yes, that's
what I'm hearing. All right, all right. For the second question, this is for Danny and Charmaine as well. So do you think that top leaders of your organization, or even your clients, and Danny, are they aware that the CEOs, the CFOs, are they really aware of the gravity of the cybersecurity implications of this new way of working? If yes, I'm interested in what are the actions taken by these top leaders, and if they're not, what do you think needs to be done by us, or in IT or in risk practices? What should they do so that this issue gets adequate attention?
Go ahead, Danny.
So, yeah, thank you. If this pandemic, COVID-19, isn't catching anybody's attention, I do not know what else will, But CyberArk is actually a cybersecurity organization. So even in the days without this pandemic, the IT team treats security as in the top, absolute top, paramount, and we and strict high standards of security hygiene in order to render our day-to-day tasks, regardless of whether if you are sales or whether you are in HR. So definitely, well, on top of following, we will advise the organizations to actually follow the health ministry's advisory. I think it is also important that they develop their own strategy in terms of, like, for example, separation of teams, think physical separation of teams. For example, a team A and team B kind of strategy, where else team A can meet team B, and as well as our organization to actually adopt different types of technology, as well as processes that allow this team to be very mobile, which also allow this organization to move very quickly from working from office right into this situation of working from home. I think this actually allows the organization to be flexible. I think this is one of the key advice that I would share with my peers or within our clients or with people that I meet where they need to actually adopt such strategies.
All right. Yeah, very good point. Thank you, Danny. That and flexibility, I'm taking that in, and you're so right. One of the things that we're very fortunate, because cybersecurity has remained the top risk for our organization since the beginning of the digital transformation, and even so today, like I said, we've had to accelerate our plan, and what I mean by that is our budgets are now on fast track. Right? With the multi-industry organization, you're finding the different maturity levels of the organization. So you have to understand that some portions of the industry may not have the budget to be able to do what the other side of the organization is doing. But you'd have to do it carefully so that you're able to provide the commensurate security for that environment. Now, we have, as you very well know, Aboitiz has a power portion of our organization. And in that sense, you can't expect them to go to zero trust. It's absolutely impossible. But how do we move them in that direction, right? And to move in that direction, you need to basically think how you're going to utilize what you already have, and where you need to go ahead and protect. You're protecting the perimeter, and once you have the perimeter protected, and that really includes identity, right? And so we move the vision is towards an identity based versus a perimeter or the layered security. So you have to move in that direction. But yes, I see and I feel the pressure of the board. This is number one priority for them. Cyber is one of the it's number two of the top cyber risks for our organization. And so they really put some emphasis on it simply because it's widespread, right? And I do agree with flexibility, as Danny had said. Being able to put the proper security support for a particular organization, it may not work on one side, and you definitely you don't have a cookie cutter approach as well.
Exactly. So we do have a question here from Johannes. How do you go about your incident response protocols, given the pandemic forced us to work remotely at significant proportions? Like as organizations, what are the top of mind items you considered and implemented? I believe, Charmaine, you may have answered some portion of it, but I think there's this part on how do you actually go about the incident response protocols in your company.
All right, good question, because that is BAU. You wake up in the morning and you're expecting an incident. I happen to come from my previous life. That was basically what you woke up to, and wake up, there's another incident. and to train. You're constantly training. And one of the things that we did so much of was basically secure train. You can't train enough. But really understanding your critical systems. And then again, in an organization as this, I used to remember just one industry, and I always focus on that. And I had a multi-industry this time. And in this, you really have to ensure what are the critical systems, make sure they have, just follow and ensure that they have the processes behind them and the backup, the resiliency, and have this been tested. So you don't stop. In fact, you continue that process over and over, because it can actually happen more so today than it is. And if you look at our external environment, nation and state issues going back and forth for that basically attack critical infrastructure, you have to remember that although you don't see it, we're working from home, but the grid is easily hackable if we're able to infiltrate that environment. So yes, continuous improvement of your incident management processes, and don't forget your communications, because days will change over time. So you have to develop new ways to talk to one another in this extended environment as well.
All right. Any comments, Danny?
Yes,
Or-
actually, I agree that because I agree, Charmaine, because all of us actually got into this pandemic. We were kind of put into this situation in a very, very quick, short timeline. So everybody was kind of reacting to this and slowly moving in towards the new norm. So as I agree what Charmaine actually mentioned, practice is always very, very important, and also fine-tuning and actually fine-tuning the security policies that organization has, because so far many organizations just have been putting in place in a lot of different types of security policy, but this is the real test. This is the real test, and policies have to be continually to be refined, and different types of processes to be implemented, different types of technology to be introduced towards the team to actually enforce the team to be more productive as well as secure as well.
All right. On the third question, so this is still for both of you. The pandemic has forced the shift towards digital, as we mentioned, and has changed how organizations account for the issue of trust, just like the discussion that we had a while ago with White. In your perspective, how should company build this infrastructure that protects your stakeholder, what they value most, while proactively detecting threats in the domain of cybersecurity, data protection, regulatory compliance, and reputation? This is actually related to one of the questions here as well, wherein I think in Aboitiz, you are quite advanced, wherein you already have some preparation in place, but there are a lot of organizations that may not be as ready as some of the other organizations. They're asking what are the top priorities that needs to be considered for those who are in the later stage of the race.
Okay, I guess for one thing is to understand your landscape, right? You've extended the landscape, now you're working from home. So you really need to go back to the basics and ensure that you know who, what your assets are and who has access. And it's okay to limit the access at the moment. You can close it down and then extend it when you're sure that you have the proper access. I can't stress that enough, because today people are going to try to connect to your network, and if you have an open network, they're connecting from their home computers, their mobile phones, and the like, and that hasn't been secured yet. So basically, try that first, right? It's not easy. But making sure that you have the basics, your access and your equipment, right? And focus on that. And then the second thing would actually be understand what's going on outside your environment, under a perimeter, and making sure that your basics are down. If you're in a layered security or a perimeter type security, which most of us are, we need to partner with third parties. That's where we start to see that it's not just I have a SOC and I can handle everything. It's impossible. You can never do that today. What can be done is create partnerships with business partners, third-party service providers who can provide you that eyes and ears for you and give you that intel. It's really important to get that information up front. Not to say that they can give you a call. We see something happening in this environment. And so you can focus also and put that extra layer of security there. So that would be my
Thank you.
Well, interestingly, CyberArk recently did a survey on 3,000 remote office workers. From that particular survey, we understand that, from them actually expanding remote work environment puts the business actually into some risk, and as well as the sensitive data of the organization will be at risk as well. So for example, some of this particular survey was 77% of remote employees actually have their device totally unmanaged. So about 66% of external devices was used to communicate for work purposes. So, and more shockingly, about 93% of these employees uses similar password across platforms and application. So this is actually quite shocking information. As Charmaine, actually you mentioned earlier, right? When it comes to the trusting of employees moving into the next new norm, I think organizations should actually enforce zero trust approach to actually access when they want to access to any of the proprietary assets within the organization. So, and organizations should leverage on different layers of security strategies and technologies to ensure that employees are productive and as well as secure. So focus on securing the people, focus on securing the processes, and focus on actually securing the technology that lets these people be productive. So lastly, also conduct things like stress tests and different scenarios to ensure that the system and processes can adequately cope with this spike of remote workers. I think that is also very, very important.
Yeah, I have an interesting follow-up question from one of our participants here, Henaro. So with this pandemic and the concerns of top management in terms of cybersecurity risk, usually the knee-jerk reaction is get our vendors and help us secure our premises or our assets, and they think that getting the security tools in place would probably help them. So and in some instances, a lot of companies are still working on the process or the policies first before they actually purchase a tool, a security tool. So the question here is, do we improve more first on the process, or should we place security tools to cover that? That question is from Henaro. Interesting, right?
Well, I think of it this way. It can be an opportunity, actually. When you are in a predicament and you need to jump, as earlier we were talking about, ZTA is a long road ahead. However, if I can jump it on some portion of the organization, especially if it's flexible enough, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. Why? Because then I will have the pilot environment, right? Especially if I have the funding and I can actually turn on and off and just move a clean slate into an environment, that would be a perfect scenario. And maturity is both, getting the tools and the processes that go hand in hand. I always say we can't tool ourselves to level 4. We cannot tool ourselves to a maturity level 4, an optimized level. It's not possible. It will not work. Because in order for the tools to work, you should have the right processes in hand already. The right policies, so that when you put the tools together, the policies that go on top of those are clean. Imagine trying to encrypt a database that's full of garbage, and really what you needed to encrypt was like 20 gigs out of the 1 terabyte. So right, so that's basically what it is. It's both. Go up together on both sides. Look at the technology and make sure the policies and procedures that you're going to implement are cleaned out as well, and then put that together, and then that will improve your maturity and be able to be flexible over time.
Yes,
Great answer.
I definitely 100% agree with Charmaine. So again, I believe that YKit earlier has actually shared a slide that security is a team game. So again, if organizations purely depending on implementing of security solutions and expect it to be a silver bullet without processes, I think that will be a wrong move, because without proper processes, organizations can't move forward and can't be, especially with even more security tools in your environment, you become really rigid, and employees of the organization will find it very difficult to actually to render out the task. So it has to be hand in hand. And I think with current threats that's evolving in this new world right now, so with daily new types of attacks that's actually surfacing. So organization has to constantly be aware and know how to actually handle such new threats, whether it's to be APT or whether it's to be ransomware. They have to constantly tweak their processes and tweak their security policies to at least maintain this benchmark of understanding of how they address to the new world, the next world kind of threats that's evolving constantly. So this is something that there's never a end game. It has to be something that is constantly moving forward, and maybe thinking the next step ahead, preventing and also constantly tracking your own internal processes and as well as security policies.
All right, thank you. We have very good questions from our participants here. So the next question is really on resiliency. So contrary to the effect of the pandemic situation, to most organizations, there are businesses that are actually thriving and growing because of the shift in the consumer, activities and financial activities and lifestyle. Considering the surge in growth, what are the things to consider in updating the company's BCP or business continuity plans to support the business and make it more resilient?
All right. The more technologically advanced you are, the more you need to really look into your backup strategies, right? Because it can go away, right? Banking online, for example, you can't rest assured that it will be on all the time. And so when it does happen, you still need the over-the-counter services, right? Things that are very important in that aspect, right? So it's more so that as we move the technology and we have the ability to automate, you need to also focus on the resiliency portion. Meaning, yes, I automated, I also have a backup solution, right? And that has to be continuous, as exactly what we were talking about. Be flexible and continue to train. No matter how digitally transformed you are, it can be disrupted and it can go away.
All right. Any comments from Danny?
Yes. So in this pandemic, you can see two types of businesses. One that is actually very traditional, that has been not thinking out of the box and been and having the mentality of if it's not broken, don't fix it. And there is another type of business that constantly changing and seeing how they can move forward, and with digital and transformation. So this pandemic, when it happened, it kind of what happens to these two types of businesses. Obviously, the first one with the traditional business approach kind of will find significant challenges in reaching out to the market, where else the people, the group of companies that have actually slowly been thriving and adopting digital transformation finds it a lot easier to adapt and change and reach out to this their potential prospects and their customers as well. So I think after this pandemic, it's really important that businesses should realize that not just developing go-to-market strategies, they must think of actually what is the next step of actually reaching out to the customers, the potential customers that where else nobody will know that when this pandemic will end. Nobody will know when does the next pandemic that will happen. So they have to be constantly on the toes to actually to reach out in different platforms and different types of approaches, so to keep their business ongoing.
All right, thank you. Now going back to our list of questions here. So the fourth question is for Charmaine, or feel free, Danny, if you want to answer as well. So has the with the pandemic and the remote working structure affecting cybersecurity strategy, has there been an effect in the area of identity and privilege access? And what were the actual projects that were accelerated as a result of this situation right now?
Okay, I'll first talk about from an infrastructure perspective. So you're obviously moving from a on-premise to a cloud, and then from a cloud now to an extended environment. That being said, you need to act fast. You need to be able to segment things. You need to provide more instances, servers, and the like if you're in the infrastructure space. From a security standpoint, you then move that mentality. I need to move fast. I don't have time to go ahead and configure that endpoint. Okay? I need to move towards the ZTA that we were talking about earlier, right? So zero trust is the only way that you are going to be able to support that ever-evolving landscape, whether they're on-premise, whether they're on cloud, whether they're on some remote location. And being able to do that systematically, that has accelerated. That has accelerated. What I thought was a greenfield pilot that I was going to do is now happening this year or within the next couple of months. So that was not supposed to happen till next year. So that was accelerated. I'm excited about it because it's a greenfield. Of course, I can showcase what it can do, but it also allowed me to amplify, or allowed the security team to amplify access management, provisioning, right? And being able to control those other folks. What we call other folks is basically our third party, our service partners. How do you get them in the fold? You can't get them in the old-fashioned Active Directory, and you can't. It's impossible. You need to go ahead and utilize the new technology and the new way to do it, and it's easier. So that has allowed us to accelerate that program, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Right.
Yes, I 100% agree with what Charmaine has to share. So one of the experience actually I had was one of one of our customers came to us and said that because of this pandemic, we have to actually implement different types of different levels of VPNs so that they allow people to remote back in to do their day-to-day tasks, to do their work. But however, because the traditional way of actually deploying such solution, it takes too much time for them to do procurement processes, to procure appliances, to actually install into a data center, to actually buy licenses, to actually allow the users and train the users to actually log into these devices to actually to do their day-to-day tasks. They became too cluttered and too slow to actually implement this. So I agree that zero trust is definitely very important, because that you have to trust your employee to do their task back at home, but then again is you will not know what is actually happening back at their home, but rather you need them to be get back to be doing their day-to-day tasks as fast as possible, and traditional deployment will not get you there. And only leveraging on very agile type of platforms and very scalable, elastic platform will be the way moving forward. So I guess again, there are many lessons that we all can learn from this pandemic.
All right, we're running out of time for probably one more last question. Yep. So with the transition to more flexible platforms, and as you mentioned, cloud, digital, how important is identity privilege, access management in successfully orchestrating this shift towards this new way of working? Probably this, Danny?
Yeah, definitely. With the especially this recent 1-2 years, there are definitely more and more people moving to digital transformation, moving to cloud, leveraging on flexible platforms, automation tools. They are definitely getting more and more common to actually help to reduce the footprint of human intervention. But with that, besides the normal privileged users, like for example, your database administrator or your the normal human beings that are managing the IT assets, organizations have to actually relook into their security strategy, because now with machines and applications, they too hold very important credentials and identities, especially RPA systems, like for example robots as well. They too hold very, very important privileged identities. So if it will be a attacker's really low-hanging fruit if this type of identities are overlooked and not secure. And once these identities are actually being compromised, the organization can easily incur a lot of damages when it comes to having the identities being compromised.
Agree. We have some interesting questions here from Mark. With the current scenario, most of our workforce are working from home. How do we balance security over their business unit requirements? Are there like business unit requirements that maybe sounds insecure, but they're really demanding it for the business to continue, but it's just a little bit unsecure? Have you met that or had that kind of challenge in the recent weeks or months? Charmaine or Danny, if there are instances wherein you experience this one, wherein your users are demanding certain things and you had to balance the need for security over their business unit requirements or the user requirements.
Yeah, that's one thing about our organization. They would ask us before they operate, so that's the good thing, because it's so important to this organization. Security is so top. It's number one besides infrastructure, and it's security, simply because of this extended environment. So they do ask us for those things. There's been some requests, however, of course, different users, but it's easy to ask the question and relay that back to the user and say, is the data you're putting in this particular platform, how are you going to secure it? Can it be, is it hackable? And when you ask that, they tend to have to think about it again, because then you give that, the risk owner is the project or the business unit owner. And that's all you have to ask that business owner to do and say, from your perspective, is your data and are you available? Are you willing to take those certain risks? With that in mind, you can be sure that they're going to do the right. They're going to make the right decisions.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I have a few points. One thing definitely is really difficult to actually balance security and productivity, because the more security that you implement in your organizations, definitely they will, employees will find some challenges maneuvering around getting information. But you know what? That's what hacker wants. That's what attacker wants, you see, because the easier that the users can access to the data, it means it's easy for them as well. So the next point I want to get at is education. It's important to actually have the users to be educated, to actually understand that security is absolute paramount in terms of their organization, because everybody plays a part. And if the users and the employees, for example, the HR is not educated about security, then they will not appreciate all the challenges that's put forward. They will find it very cumbersome to actually access to their work. But with good education of cybersecurity, they understand and they know that these security measures and policies will only help them instead of giving them roadblocks.
All right. Thank you very much, Danny and Charmaine. And the questions from the participants as well, they're very interesting. So hopefully we shed some light and some perspective on cybersecurity and in this pandemic situation right now. Back to you, B.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was great hearing you all tackle on all those questions. And also to those who asked the questions from the attendees, thank you very much. I hope that everything was answered as you asked. And that would actually bring it to the conclusion of our event. This has actually been a momentous event for Escom and CyberArk, and we can't thank you enough for joining and making it all happen. I'd also like to thank engineer Reyes for giving his speech earlier in the beginning. We hope the informative talks and ideas exchange help pave the way for a better and a more secure approach in cybersecurity. And I invite you all to complete the survey using the link that will be here right now. And basically, to get in touch with CyberArk, feel free to contact Danny Heng. And if your company is interested in hosting a webinar, do feel free to reach me or Seth as well. The contacts are all listed there on the slide. And I just want to once again thank everybody, and I hope you all have a great day and stay safe as we get through this pandemic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Off your mic.